you pray to the Lord and Savior. In time when life was done, you unfair. Remember my King of Johnny.
Yes, this is Bro Diallo Show, Q4 Radio. Today is November 20th in the year of your Lord. Come again. In the year, today is November 20th in the year of your Lord, 2019. This is Bro Diallo on the Q4 Radio broadcast, AM 1680, Q4.org, TuneIn app, and of course at Diallo Kenyatta YouTube. We're broadcasting live and direct, and I have a very special guest in the studio with me, Brandon Scates, to discuss Blood on the Academic Auction Block, your new book, along with other topics,
Absolutely.
if they do so emerge. So this is the text. If you're on the video, Blood on the. Let's just start off. Where can they get a copy of this text?
You could either contact me directly on Instagram at Brandon Lamar Skates Writes, or you could email me BrandonLamarSkates at gmail.com, or just Google the title of the book and it'll pop up.
Okay, so we're gonna say that a couple more times. How people
Absolutely.
can get in touch with you for the book and for whatever other purposes and means they might want to engage with you, because you are a public scholar and intellectual.
Thank you.
You're not hiding up in no ivory tower.
Absolutely.
You down here with the people them
Yes, sir.
until you secure the bag, and then you get on and leave us for a white girl. But until that day, he's accessible for now, y'all. He ain't been put on yet. You know, don't let, especially Chicago cats, man. I was just talking to my co-conspirator, and he, I was asking him about how Chicago produces so many sellouts. And Chicago's so forgiving of its sellouts, from Obama to Farrakhan to Kanye to Jordan.
Common. Let's not forget Common.
Yeah. And so, he's Chicago born and bred. So when I bring them people up, he'd be like, yeah. But then I look in his eyes and here in the studio, and he don't like that. Y'all love y'all loyal.
Nah, people be upset with me though.
You too.
You know my history. Like I stayed with a new Instagram or Facebook page. Yeah, they just put me back in Facebook jail again.
Again? Yeah, see, I've learned. I've been trained. I've been broken. I'm Toby on Facebook. You Kuta Kente. I went ahead and to hell with it. But I stopped posting. I kind of falling back quite a bit on Facebook.
Even on my Instagram, if you follow me on my new one, if you know my history, I usually post the same kind of content you post. They got me a little spook now. I want to keep the page up, so it's just posting the book and posting my own video content.
We need some new forums.
Yeah,
I'm talking with some brothers.
Yeah,
all the way in. You gotta talk directly to
okay.
them. I know you're talking to me, and I appreciate that because your mama brought you up right. You want to talk to the person you in the studio with, but you have to actually talk to the microphone. Yeah, much better. Yeah, it sounds better in your ears, right? So I know you was raised right, but sometimes we gotta go against what Grandma told us.
Right, absolutely.
I know. So, but anyway, let's just get into the topic because we don't have a lot of time. Absolutely. As Khalid say, we won't be long, but we must be strong. I love that. Right. Brothers don't rhyme enough or more. How come you young scholars don't rhyme as much as the old scholars? Y'all don't have the slick lines like that.
I'll be trying to do my thing with, as far as I'm connected to a lot of hip hop artists. So even the young up and coming hip hop artists, I always try to encourage the youth. I try to introduce them.
The mic. You keep
try to introduce them to new artists. The new artists that's coming up. I don't try to bag on the new artists. It's
the neck tattoo artists.
Yeah, the neck tattoo artists. They got the face tats, but I introduced them to real music. I was raised on old school. I started hearing Sam Cooke at 5 years old. So I try to introduce them Sam Cooke, Marvin Gaye.
Are they receptive?
Yeah, absolutely.
Really?
Yeah,
okay.
Some of them. They got level heads. And then I do a lot of youth development work, so that's my way to get in with them. So I keep up with all new artists, even though it hurts my ears. Just so I can keep in tune.
So you heard about what happened with Lil Reese?
Yeah, I heard about it. So I've been talking to a lot of youth about it, just giving them the reason.
That's gonna raise his profile though.
Yeah.
He gonna move more units now.
Yeah, he just dropped a new song.
He dropped a new song right after getting shot. 2 days after getting shot in the neck.
Come outside.
Oh, he's still beefing too.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ice Cube said brothers get smoked, taking their life as a joke. But I guess, man, Well, maybe we can get into that later. Let's talk in this. So your new book is Blood on the Academic Auction Block. Can you give us a synopsis of the book? What motivated you to write the book? What's in the book? And perhaps why the book was necessary at this moment?
I've dealt a lot, and people's like, this is the comparison people always try to compare me to. They try to always compare me to Dr. Umar Johnson, which is...
Is that a compliment or an insult? How you take that?
I'm very insulted by it because I've worked directly with Marcus Klein, who does a lot of work with independent African Center homeschooling education.
Shout out to Marcus Klein
and schooling.
Freedom Home Academy.
Schooling. I worked there for 2 years under his tutelage, so I learned directly from him on how the institution builds. So I wrote a bulk of it. It's my master thesis. So the focus of it is it's a case study and political education handbook for understanding correlation between Brown versus Board of Education, 1954 Supreme Court decision, and the current state of the school to prison pipeline. I come from not being able to write until I was in 5th grade. I was in special education.
Shout out special ed, me too.
Shout
out to special ed.
Absolutely.
I actually enjoyed special ed. I wish I could have stayed there. If I had known that test they had given me was a test to get out,
right,
I would have blew that test on purpose.
Yeah.
Real talk. Yeah, but go on. Shout out to special ed.
I had my mother is the reason where I am today. If it wasn't for my mother, so I have to pay homage. And my father, too, because I wouldn't be here. My father wasn't in my life, but I thank my father for providing me and breathing life into me, passing wisdom as a man, what a man, teaching me how to be a man the best way he knew how. And for me, the importance of this book is I share my experience not only in special ed, but I share my experiences dealing with Negroes politically, culturally, also in academia. I was railroaded from academia based on the work that I was doing. Going in on carrying on the legacy of Steve Coakley Sr. and his work.
We need to speak a little loud. I'm sorry, the people you see.
But
there you go.
Speaking on the legacy of Steve Coakley Sr., I had an opportunity actually to interview Steve Coakley Jr. That was last year. So it was cool just to get the opportunity, but being able to discuss and have.
I'm sorry. I hate to harass you, but I want the people to hear you.
But having an open dialogue about, my main thing is people's like, oh, you can't talk about other black people. That's not nice. Well, if they're doing foolishness and, running amok, then it needs to be addressed. The foolishness, people get upset when I address the issue of Jay-Z and Beyonce.
What you say about Jay-Z and Beyonce? About how proud you are that a black man can come from Marcy Projects and with a little bit of slanging and a little bit of pimping, able to get a seat at the table.
Yeah, retired drug dealer.
Yeah.
Sitting at the table.
Isn't that an inspirational story?
Yeah, for some people it could be.
And then when he had a daughter, he found out that women aren't bitches.
Yeah.
Isn't that noble? Doesn't that warm your heart, Sue?
I'm glad to see the progression. People's like,
was it progression?
It's a lot of Negroes that think that though.
I'm asking you though.
No progression at all.
So what you say about Jay and Bay?
But people were upset. This what got my last Instagram shut down when he reached quote unquote billionaire status. And I was like, you have to look at who his mentor is. He a power elitist. He has a mentor that's a heavyweight.
Forbes?
Yeah, it was like a Forbes interview with...
No, he actually sat across from Forbes, and he sat across from, what's the guy from Nebraska?
Okay.
The investor who lives in the billionaire that lives in the humble home in Nebraska.
I can't remember the name of it, but there's a couple interviews where he said with power elitists.
Right, yeah.
That for those who don't know the history of the Rockefeller family. Oh, even his record label. Rockefeller Records comes from the Rockefeller
Warren Buffett,
family.
thank y'all.
Yeah,
Warren Buffett. But you know, Warren Buffett is like, in his later stages, he's collecting Negroes.
Yeah,
Warren Buffett worked with, who's the boxer?
Floyd.
He worked with Floyd.
Money Time.
Yeah, so he works with a lot of aspiring young black capitalists. I think that's his way of reaching back and giving back.
Mm-hmm. But they get upset. Even Common.
Common's up there too?
Yeah, he up there.
He doing them kind of numbers?
Yeah, I can't remember. It was something he did. He went on, what show was that? It was on Comedy Central. It was on Comedy Central. He was like, I just want to get along with white people.
Oh yeah, that's back when he said we have to reach a handout.
Yeah.
To white people.
This was after he did Selma, by the way.
Right, yeah. Him and John Legend. Mm-hmm. And John Legend, who is the sexiest man alive. Yeah, he is.
Yeah, but you know, covered, man.
If you want, I had promised to tell everybody just a little aside how you could be what I find in common with every sexiest man alive. So if you ever aspire to be the sexiest, I see you getting there. I know, I've been knowing you for years, and you've refined your look. Yeah, I see you shining.
I changed it up.
I'm gonna have to get like you. If I know you was gonna be all that, I wouldn't have just come in here with my ratty sweater. But okay, that's fine. Show me up on my own show. But if you notice something about the sexiest man alive, it's the most, for black men, you have to be the non-threatening. Yeah. That's another word for sexiest man alive, is the most non-threatening black man alive. So Idris Elba, everybody's like, oh, he's so beautiful. But I mean, you throw a rock in Nigeria, you're going to hit an Idris Elba. Everybody look like that. Mm-hmm. All them tropical sun-baked brothers, the Caribbean, they all look like that. Yeah. But you have to be able to be strong and non-threatening at the same time. Mm-hmm. You have to be able to have a presence but be non-threatening. So John Legend became like your classic liberal, and he talked against Trump. So that's all you have to do. You can't be threatening. Mm-hmm. You can't have strong political position. Now, white men can do that. Yeah, you gotta get like Mel Gibson had very strong political positions, and Sylvester Stallone, they were also sexiest men alive at one point. But if you're a black man and you want to be the sexiest man alive, you have to first not work on your physique, on your pecs. You have to not work on your grooming and your camera readiness. The first thing you have to do is be the most non-threatening black man alive. And then that makes you eligible to be sexy to white folks. Because they like dangerous black men, but only not dangerous in an intellectual or scholarly or ideological muscles. But you can't have intellectual stances and ideological stances. So that's my advice. If you want, enroll in my handsome black boy training school. And I can teach you how to get there, how to get up there.
Yeah, and then who else? Colin Kaepernick is another sensitive topic for black people.
Okay, so you've covered a lot just in this little bit. Now let's go back to special ed, because I know it's kind of a plague for black people.
Absolutely.
But I was in special ed, and what I didn't know when I was in special ed is they run special ed like a gifted program. Like when I was in special ed in the Kansas City, Missouri school district, I went from being in a classroom of like 30, 45 black kids to a classroom of like 12 to 13. Yeah. We had 2 dedicated teachers. We had 2 teachers instead of 1. A smaller class sizes, more in-depth help. It wasn't set up in a normal classroom where you had the teachers, all the desks lined up in a row and the teacher up front with the chalkboard. It was set up with workstations. And there was an art station, a math station, a quiet area, and all these different workstations. And when you went into special ed, depending on your mood and disposition and interest and ability to focus, you could go to one station to the next. And it was not a competitive where they grade us against each other. They taught us to work together and to support one another. And where in class, don't cheat on her paper, we were encouraged to look at each other's strength, so the child that had the best strength would help guide the other children and share his strength. And then where he was weak, you would support him. And so I never had that educational experience. At 5th grade, they put me in special ed. And I'd never had that schooling experience. And for the first time, I had enjoyed and really liked school, being in special ed. And plus, bullying. In special ed, many of the children had been held back 1 or 2 years. And so they were a little bigger than the other kids in the school. So nobody teased special ed kids, because if you mess with one special ed kid, you was dissing all of them. And then them bigger kids, them 22-year-old fifth graders, will come stomp your ass. So I didn't even have issues with bullying. Like, I used to have issues, kids making fun of me. You know, I was kind of bummy and stuff. And I didn't have the name brand clothes. But when I got special ed, I became part of a family. And we moved through that school. Nobody bothered us. Nobody teased us. And it was just every element of special ed education for me was the best formal educational experience of my young life.
Oh, yeah. In Chicago, it's a bit different. Like, I went to this public school I went to. For 7th and 8th grade, we would have time where we would get pulled out of class and go with the special ed teacher. It was times where they still wanted us to socialize with.
Yeah, see, that's
peers.
how they do it now. Cause you much younger than me. You probably half my age.
Yeah, they wanted to still have us socialize with like other students.
Yeah, so.
But fortunately enough for me, like when I got to high school, majority of my friends they ran the streets anyway. So if they seen somebody messing with me, they would like nobody would mess with me.
But you had what they call that a personalized academic plan.
Yeah,
IEP.
Individual
education plan. Right. You had an IEP. See, they didn't do it like that when I was a kid.
The benefit for me, my mother advocated for me instead of to get like the smallest percentage, maybe 15, she was like, it was like 30%. She advocated for me to get like 80-90% of my learning. So even when I was in high school, I was still surpassing even my regular peers that was still in regular classes.
So why did they put you in special ed?
Because my learning, I was a visual learner, so I learned by like video, like most youth. But it's just my learner, I'd rather like listen to some music or like I'd rather have writing. Like,
so going through, because I was put in there, and the rule was they put you in, and we had these basic skill tests.
Yeah.
So when I was back in the 80s, when I was a little kid, and they would snatch you out and put you apart from everybody. You weren't allowed to even. They didn't really want you mingling with the normies, with the children that weren't special ed. But every year they would come and give you this basic skills test. And depending on what you get in the basic skills test, they leave you a special ed or put you back with your class, and you had to test at or above where your class was.
Right.
So I didn't know that, because I didn't even get put in. I got put in special ed for behavioral issues. Like one year, we were homeless. So one school year, I went to like 5 different elementary schools. Oh, wow. Like 5 different schools. Boom, boom, boom. So my attendance was shot. So basically. They made me go to summer school, and you already got a family that's unstable, and then they're gonna make me go to summer school, and I didn't attend summer school, and I didn't. So anyway, that's what they put for lack of attendance, and I didn't show up. So they put me in special ed for that reason, and I didn't know that I could test out of it. They just came in one day and was like, everybody line up and take the test, and so I took the test and I tested out. But if I had known, man. But I don't know how this IEP.
A lot of and that's true in CPS.
You can test out of your IEP.
I'm not sure if you can test out of it, depending on whatever it is your parent want. Because a lot of parents like use it to like their advantage, especially the ones that are severely miseducated. So they drop their children off at school thinking the school is going to educate them. But a lot of people get checks. The school get a check for like however many children are in special ed, and then
the school
and then some parents get a check too.
Because I know they pay black parents to drug their children.
Yeah,
to put them on that Ritalin, Paxil,
Zoloft. My mother would never let me do it, but my peers.
Oh man, I'm so happy that stuff wasn't around. Man, ADHD and all that. They didn't talk about that when I was a child, because I'd have been on that.
Because they was trying to make me ADD. And my mother was like,
no,
he don't have no issue.
Bless her heart,
like,
man.
learning that.
Good.
Like my mother was able like to advocate for me, but my peers, like I remember I was in when I was in high school, it was my sophomore year, so I was like 15, 16. I remember they used to have the military, like the army, come up to the school, and they was like, yeah, you know what? Even though we had social workers, they was like, yeah, once you graduate from high school, but I've literally heard like social workers tell like my peers, like, You know, at 16, you could legally drop out of school without your parent permission. You could just come in and sign yourself out. And then I would start seeing like a lot of my peers that was special ed, that's already off the drugs from like in special ed.
Right.
So it was an easy transition for them to do like pills on the street.
Right.
Or like at the time it was like marijuana and they were drinking. Self-medicate. But now with the same pills, same stuff that's in Ritalin and all these special ed medications, the same thing that's in opioids, like the same thing that's pills and like promethazine and codeine on the street, Molly, all that. It's an easy transition, so it's like it makes it easy to feed her like that.
Yeah, that's what my wife told me. She said they would addict these children in school, and when they hit 18, they get cut off the Medicaid. When they lose their parents' Medicaid, they get cut off from the drugs, which they've developed a dependence for. And that's when a lot of them jump to illicit drugs, because they're no longer, when they're out of CPS and they're out of the Medicare, the Medicaid system, and out of their mother's benefits, they go to, that's one of the biggest things that feeds the illicit drug addiction, you know. So, yeah, it's not just school to prison pipeline, it's school to addiction pipeline. Pipeline. So yeah, and even when my son, he was skateboarding and he had a bad fall and shattered his knee, and they were just trying to ply him with drugs. They gave him Oxycontin. They tried to give him fentanyl. They gave him a prescription for Oxycontin. They tried to give him fentanyl and all these other very strong opioids. And I'm like, this is a 16-year-old child, and you just giving him drugs that will knock out an elephant. Like, wow, really? So we had to be there like 24/7, just trying to run interference, because and one of the doctors, this little Indian lady, I won't say her name because she definitely doesn't want to be revealed, but when we first were there, and the orthopedic specialist came in and showed us the x-ray and said, yeah, he shattered his knee, and we're just going to have to put a pin in there and put him in on crutches for about 3 months, and he should be back, you know. He has a slight limp, but they said that'll go away now. But he's off the crutches. But anyway, she shut us in, and she said, listen, I work the emergency room here, but I also have my clinicals and my internship at a recovery center, addiction recovery. And what I find is young men will come in here, sprained ankle, broken wrist, and other injuries, and they'll come in here and get treatment for their injuries, and within 6 to 8 months, they're in the treatment center for addiction.
Wow.
And she said, I keep seeing that cycle. So every time I see a young male, especially, she said, especially young males, but young males are more injury prone, I guess, more likely to, because I got nieces and little nieces, and none of them, like my little nephew's always in a cast somewhere, just active boys. But she said, with especially young black men, I see this cycle of healthy, vibrant, active young black men injure themselves, skateboarding, cycling, basketball, and other sports, and within 6 to 8 months, they're in addiction treatment center. So they stringing these children out in the hospitals. It ain't just the schools, you know. And they were trying to give my son the strongest drugs possible. Even when he's sleeping, not even in distress, they want to put IV fentanyl in his IV. And we had to be like, no, stop. He's not even expressing, he's asleep. Oh, well, we just want to make sure he doesn't feel any pain. So it's crazy. Like, they want the whole society addicted, man. It's crazy. It's not really crazy. It's insidious. Let me use a more accurate word. It's very insidious.
Now it's a drug crisis because opioids has impacted white America.
White people always been strung out on drugs. I don't buy that.
Yeah.
White people have always done more drugs than black people.
I went to school in Macomb, Illinois at Western Illinois University. And there was a guy that got busted. When they busted in his house, he had a whole entire meth lab.
Right. Here's the thing about that drug thing. It's not, white people aren't having an opioid crisis. White people have always been strung out in this country. If it wasn't moonshine and whiskey prohibition, white people have always done more drugs than anybody else. And they're the ones that string everybody else, whether it's firewater to the natives or crack cocaine to the black. But here's the thing. White people are high-functioning addicts.
Absolutely.
But the problem is that white people are losing their economic standing. So most addicts in the United States have jobs. Many addicts have very high, like Wall Street runs on cocaine.
Absolutely.
So if the problem is that white people are losing their money, and because they don't have the money, they don't have the resources for the high quality drugs. Because they had access to higher quality drugs, and they had access, and also this nutrition is a big thing of it. So they would use these drugs to help navigate their societies and stuff. But because their economic and material foundations are eroding, they're out here. So it's really a poverty issue.
Absolutely.
So they're using poor people drugs, and they have to use them out in the open. It used to be, if you were a high-powered person, you were a lawyer or a police chief, you go smoke your crack in the suburbs, and then you just go to your basement and you go through your high, and then you pull yourself off the floor, and then you go do surgery on black people. But now they in the streets. And it used to be white people used to buy their drugs in large amounts.
Wholesale.
Right. Whereas poor people buy in doses.
Yeah.
You buy one dosage. You buy your hit, you go to the street, you do your hit, and then you strung out, and then after that, you back on a mission. They used to call it on a mission when the drug addict is out there trying to get out there to get the money. Poor addicts buy per dose. One dose at a time.
Yeah.
And then you do the dose. And so those drug addicts are always in the street looking like zombies. Whereas white people, they would buy in packages. They would buy in bulk. So you wouldn't have to see the white addicts running through the streets and scampering through the streets like, Tyrone Biggums.
Right.
And busting in cars. Yeah. So they buy in packaging. They buy in bulk. They have the economic ability to shelter themselves, to feed their habits, and they didn't have the police oversight. So if white people weren't getting the economic erosion because white people kept cutting their own selves off, if it not for the Reagan Revolution, we wouldn't have this opioid process. This is an economic and status issue, not a drug issue, because they always been strung out.
Absolutely.
They always been strung out.
Because I see it, because I don't do as much political education or like work on the streets as much as I used to, but I've seen like children or youth as young as like 10, 12, like strung out, like on drugs.
Yeah.
Like
everybody in this country on drugs.
Not in school, like.
Yeah.
And it's disheartening for me. I'm like, man, like.
But that's the byproduct of oppression. You find that you go to you go to New Zealand or Australia, look at the Aboriginal people. You go to Africa and you go to the slums of Accra. That's a global phenomenon. It's a global phenomenon. So that's the byproduct of oppression. It seems like black people just we either ignore or we become complacent in oppression, but we're still outraged by when we see evidence of oppression.
Yep.
That I don't understand that. It's like we play with the rattlesnake, but then we get mad when we get bit. Like, why are you playing with the rattlesnake if you don't like getting injected with venom?
Hit a rattle.
Yeah. So anyway, in special ed, do you think special ed is a helpful thing or a hurtful thing for black youth? Would you reform it or just do away with it?
I would do away with it. Working with Marcus at Freedom Home Academy. There's no it's no special ed at all. It's based off like the students' intellectual abilities. So you're not placing a child, you're placing them intellectually, socially, emotionally, wherever they are level grade wise. Because it was a student that was he like 10? And he was like in the 7th grade. It was like a 5-year-old that was like in the 3rd grade. So,
but that's accelerated. What about those who aren't?
You still teach them like. So what you do is like with most children, like even like though they don't understand, you're actually supposed to teach children like 2 grade levels above. Because eventually, if they keep repeating that same process, they'll grasp the concept eventually of learning it. No matter if they're struggling in your class, you don't fail them. You help them. You have a relationship with the parents, and parents play a factor. So African Center Education it doesn't have to happen just inside of a school setting. It's supposed to happen at first the home. Parents should be responsible. Whatever your children are watching, if you allow them to watch these different shows, teach them examples of like what's going on with the Power is a good example. Empire. If they're going to watch these shows anyway, you should explain to them the things that they're watching through the propaganda. And media is a large factor, and I like to debunk a lot of stuff from media. Like when Black Panther came out, I did like a live stream on Instagram, and I was breaking down Black Panther, and people was like, "Oh, it was real revolutionary." I was like, "Yeah, T'Challa working with the CIA is real. That's some real revolution for you right there." And people was like, "Oh, that. How can you say such a thing?" He was working with the feds.
Right.
And then Black Panther movie was created by white people.
The movie or the character?
The characters.
Yeah.
The characters. The direct, but they put the black face on it. They put Ryan Coogler as the director.
He's a good director.
Yeah, he's great, phenomenal director. Like he doing what he got to do to survive. I can't not.
That's not survival.
Well,
Millions of dollars ain't doing what you got to do to survive.
He's trying. This was. I'm speaking from the other perspective. This is what some black people say. Oh, he's just trying to survive. He's trying to feed himself. And I studied the character of Eric Killmonger or Eric Stevens, the one that Michael B. Jordan. And people was like, "Oh my God, he's like with a white girl or a Mexican, Latina." And people was like, "Oh, I can't believe it would." I was like, "It's entertainment. What do you expect him to do? He's doing a job. He did his job. Y'all just so in love with fantasy."
Right.
And you think that we're going to have Wakanda here in America, and vibranium isn't a real thing, but you have to teach. This is what I teach my students. I teach them to analyze everything. This is why I like working with youth. I don't like working with adults because I'm not going to argue with you. I'm not going to debate you. You could get upset by what I'm saying, but I need you to provide. And it's a lot of people online that think because they had a hidden color syndrome, and they watch a couple DVD lectures, and they watch some social political documentaries. They think they this grand scholar and intellectual, and they be trying to debate me. They was like, "Bro, I'm not on social media to debate. I'm on here to provide a message to people. I'm just trying to invoke you to think. If you don't agree with what I'm saying, do not follow me, block me, do whatever you feel." But I'm not gonna go back and forth, especially with like another grown man. Like I have a lot of youth that follow me, so I'm setting an example on social media. I'm using the platform responsibly, mainly for networking, but we're in an era where people can hide behind a computer screen and type and talk to you crazy. And the funniest thing is, I do a lot of stuff with guerrilla warfare. It's funny because people be talking crazy to me like on social media in Chicago, and then I'll be at a community event, and then I'll run into them, and they was talking real greasy online, and they try to come shake my hand. I was like, "No, stay on your side. Just keep my name out your mouth. That's all I'm asking you." Because I work with like a lot of youth that's in the streets. So a lot of people be talking crazy about me when I'm not around, and then my youth, they in the streets, they call me, they was like, "Yo, what you want us to do?" I was like, "Don't, let me handle it. Don't do nothing stupid." But there's a lot of people that think talking online, because what if I'm grown so much, but like the old me, if I seen you, I just hit you in the mouth. Because some people don't understand, so like they picking their teeth up off the floor, their chest up from being caved in, getting resuscitated.
Well, I'm a little, I think that debate and discourse is a good thing though.
That's true.
I actually debate people. Sometimes I'll tap out. I don't really take it personal.
Yeah, me neither.
I get a lot of people that say really off the cuff things, and I respect people that if they're gonna come at you, if they're not anonymous, because my blog, it's worse, but you get a lot of anonymous people that come and talk. But when somebody makes themselves known and they articulate their position, I think that it refines the discussion.
At least I was like, if you don't agree with me, that's fine. Let's have, like you said, let's have discourse. But don't get utterly disrespectful. And then on my post, it be a lot of beta males that disrespect women, black women. They be like, oh, I'm about liberation. Dr. John Henry Clark breaks it down the best with showbiz liberation. It's a lot of that in this era. They be online. They be talking about black love, black family, black unity, all that, and like be tearing people down that's actually doing stuff. And then I was like, but you haven't built the institution, or you're not talking about this is what I do right now. If you're not talking about the education of children and youth, we'd have nothing more to talk about. Dr. Bobby Rice says the greatest weapon in black liberation movement would be pro-black nationalistic schools or African-centered schools.
I think we've had African-centered schools. Like Bobby Wright was teaching in the 90s. And I know people from the Garvey School that went to one of the first most prominent black schools, African-centered schools. And many of them do things like worked on the Obama campaign. So because the Black Schools movement, I worked with the National Black United Front when they set up the ACE, the ACE schools, African Collegiate Education, in Kansas City, which was the very first African-centered school where you could get African-centered education from preschool all the way up to high school graduation. Wow. Yeah. And they came out and stole it from them, snatched it out. Oh, wow. Actually, Molefi Asante slid in and helped to subvert and take local and community control of those schools away. Wow. And turned it into a charter for-profit situation. That's a whole nother debate. But again, Molefi Asante, one of the first, he's the one that even the very concept of Afrocentricity, which is what it was called in the 80s, I learned from him in his book, The Afrocentric Idea. I didn't even have a concept of African identity and African history being a continuum, not a broken thing like there was African history and now there's now, as opposed to African history is an ongoing continuum. I learned that from Molefi Asante. But what I found, what I initially understood is that African-centered education was to create and cultivate Africans who would be in principled and ongoing active opposition to the status quo.
Absolutely.
And African-centered education now is promoted across the country as a means of helping your child to achieve within the system.
Yeah, that's the new
and way. It is like from reading to STEM to socialization, so that your child can go off and to Ivy League schools or even to Negro HBCUs, and then go on to careers, economic achievement and stability, personal wealth, and things of that nature. So that's what the new, as opposed to African-centered education, creating Africans who were in opposition to capitalism, who stood up against global white domination. That African-centered education is being marketed to the masses of black people as a means to help your child enter into the middle class or even into the 1% economically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even the schools I worked with, I volunteered at the Du Bois Learning Center, Supplemental African-Centered Education. I work with Simbana Fulani, their Rites of Passage program.
Chicago?
No, in Kansas City.
Okay.
And in the program, the children were required to bring their grade cards.
What's that?
They would bring their grade cards to the Rites of Passage program, and wherever they needed help academically, we would help them, and if they were having issues with math, report cards or grade cards. Yeah. What do y'all call them?
Report cards.
Okay, we call them grade cards. Whatever, report cards.
Right.
And if they had really good marks in school, we'd praise them. If they had struggle, we would help them to get ahead. But I always had issues with this. I always thought this is not what an African-centered program would be. I mean, if I was running a little Klan school for little Klansmen, for little white kids, the last thing I would do is say, bring me what the black folks give you to rate you, and then I will praise you according to how well you do according to our enemy standards and things. So, this is a criticism I've had about African-centered education.
Yeah.
We've had it for decades. We have people like my age, in their 40s, who have gone through African education. I talked to this guy at one of the earliest graduating classes of the Marcus Garvey School.
Okay.
And he would go around everywhere telling people, yeah, I came out of the Garvey Academy. You know, the Marcus Garvey Academy. And he worked for the Obama administration. Very accomplished man. He worked for the local police department. He worked for the Obama campaign, and he was a local entrepreneur. And I wouldn't trust that dude with a moldy sock. I don't think he's trustworthy. And I talked to him about his education. I ain't gonna say no names, but you know who you are. I wouldn't trust a dude with an old moldy sock, because he would say, yeah, the Marcus Garvey School taught me that I could be anything, that I could do anything. And by him being anything means being a man who can amass a lot of money, have a lot of influence and power to speak to money, and to lord my power, lord my resources, lord my education over other people in order to extract resources and to exercise control over others. I didn't see any element in this particular individual of liberation, revolution, opposition to the status quo. And I know a lot of cats, I can't speak to now, because I ain't in there now, but in my years of coming up in African-centered education, and the many people my age who have gone through African-centered education, I don't see what they call them, the lion. Remember, they're supposed to be the warriors, the Simba and the Fulani. I don't see evidence that where are all these products of African-centered education bringing hell to the system? Where are they at?
It's lacking. I could say I seen firsthand, directly working with Marcus Klein, what it's supposed to be. Like every day for like 2 years. I learned like, especially like homeschooling. So what I'm doing now is I do educational consulting. So I help and assist parents with understanding what their child has experienced within.
Well, let's get more fundamental. What is the purpose of education?
Self-development. I like to focus more so on like trades.
Right. Okay, let's say you get self-development in trade. How does that change your status within a society?
It doesn't if you aren't building things that provide for the next generation.
But we've been provided for.
That's true.
We go from one generation of oppression to the next generation of oppression to the next generation of oppression and the next generation of oppression. So you can provide for the next generation to be, you know how many sharecropping farms were handed down?
That's true.
I mean, black people were doing sharecropping since emancipation in the late 1860s. Up until the 1970s, black folks had passed down debt, sharecropping debt, for the next generation. So, I mean, you can go, because to me,
absolutely.
And you reference Bobby E. Wright. Bobby E. Wright said, it's impossible to oppress an educated people because they always scheming. It's always scheming. But what I find out, what you know from your own experience, the more formal schooling a black person gets, the less animosity they have for the larger system. That's what I'm finding. As I went to get my undergrad and get my grad degree, and I even I even went to trade school. The more advanced a person was in their education, the less discontent they had for the status quo. You know, and I know dudes that was angry and militant, and now they have a home, they have a mortgage and 2 cars, and they got some stamps on their passport. And yeah, they'll show up at an event or something and do something pro-black or positive, but they have no intention of going against capitalism, white domination, or the larger status quo. You know, they might even go to GoFundMe and put a few dollars on somebody's GoFundMe page whose loved one was killed by the cops. But there is no opposition because they personally benefit from the oppressive system. So what is the incentive for subverting it?
It's only a select few.
Yeah, but we have literally thousands of black folks going through African-centered education.
Yeah.
And it's not just African-centered education. It's Afrocentricity, which came to African-centeredness and then consciousness and wokeness. It used to be.
It's a trend now.
Right, and it used to exist. It was created to be an alternative to the system, but now it's a vehicle through achievement within the system.
Yep. Even and I know a lot of the cats in the so-called quote unquote, I call it the conscious community. It's just a con game. It's no different. All these so-called quote unquote lecturers, Umar, Sharif Nasheed, I call him Side Negro.
You don't like Sonetta either?
Nah, man, he be talking. He used to talk like real greasy online, and then he tried to bring me on his show. I denied him though. I told him no, thank you. Like, I had a phone conversation.
I haven't heard from him in a while.
Yeah, I'm not sure what he doing. Who else? Sarah Sunsetti. I know a lot of these cats been in the room with him. It's just like
how's Seti do? I ain't heard from Seti in a while.
I ain't heard from him. I think he's still doing his thing on YouTube or whatnot like that. Like do your thing. If you figured out the hustle game and all that, but by all means, like me, I told somebody at this point, like I'm not really gonna say nothing else. Like I'm tired. It's like I'm battling with like I'm not finna battle with no adults. I'm gonna do what I can, the best way I know how, and reach the youth, and pass it on. Cause the youth that I work with, that I have been working with for like since they were like children, they're sharp. So I'm gonna keep doing that, like, and putting it to the next generation. Cause it's like we playing a game of tug of war. Like you got the ones like me and you that are the revolutionary Pan-Africanists. We on one side, then you got the Negroes and everybody else, the cultural capitalists, the culturally confused on the other side, and we struggling over here.
Right.
We holding on by like the skin of our teeth.
Right.
Like we being dragged, but we still putting up the fight, and then it's like we outnumbered. So my question to people is like, how do we have to get through? We have to address the Negroes first. If we talking about real like revolution, like those have to be addressed first because they the front line for the system. That's just like the example I always use. Like my favorite cartoon is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The Turtles had to get through the Foot Clan and the Foot Soldiers before they could even get to Shredder.
Right. But yeah, I agree with that. I do think that we do need some internal protocols,
like a code of conduct.
Right, and protocols for dealing with these individuals. But I mean, in all movements, even in the of social transformation, the vanguard, as Fred Hampton would always talk about, the revolutionary vanguard was always very small in number.
Absolutely.
And I agree that there's a lot of issues with the masses, with the
Absolutely.
But a lot of times my whole thing is I don't see the appropriate coordination against let's say it's just 2%. Let's say 1/10 of 1% of conscious black people. We amongst ourselves, we don't coordinate and pool our resources and coordinate our efforts properly just amongst ourselves.
Absolutely.
So I still don't think we're in a position to fault the masses for their failings when the few of us, because if you got 2, 3, like in this city, how many conscious Pan-African revolutionary people are in the city of Chicago right now?
Collectively, I'm not sure.
Would you say there are a dozen?
I know. I could count on my hands the ones I know.
Okay. How many can you count?
It's like I got like 8.
Okay, there's 8 people. Me, I can say I know 8. I don't know if we overlap, but let's say 16 to 12.
And then they might be the same people because like we in similar.
So okay, let's leave it at 8.
8, right?
There is no. What are we 8 people doing in the city?
That's a good question.
Yeah, but it's an easy question too, because not a damn thing.
Nothing.
Now
we are doing stuff like on our own, but collectively, not together.
Every year in the city of Chicago, I go to events. Black psychologists and social justice, anti-police terrorism. I go to all these groups, and I get all these good insights. Even the yearly Kwanzaa, I go to the Cultural Connection. They having all those events, and Dr. Obari's events, and we communicate. We really have a lot to share, but there is no real cohesion. What there's a lot of fiefdoms. Like there's a lot of people doing good work. Like you mentioned Marcus Klein. You mentioned you didn't mention them, but Umedics, Ujama Medics, and you have all these different groups, BYP 100, doing their things in their area. But we're fighting against a coordinated system. So you have like Marcus or the Freedom Home Academy dealing with academics because we are under attack academically.
Absolutely.
You got Umedics dealing with health, wellness, trauma, and the medical system is racist against us. Infant mortality and injury, all that. But the systems we're fighting against in our isolated pockets all coordinate with each other. So the educational system coordinates with the medical system. But the people resisting racism within education don't coordinate with the people resisting with health and wellness. Like, I tried to, when we were doing vegan outreach and vegan catering, we would go to different black academic programs and say, let us prepare your lunches. And it's like, well, ain't nobody sitting here worried about eating cauliflower. We trying to educate our children for the future, this and that. So nutrition. So there's no revolutionary coordination. There's a lot of people doing really good, doing good righteous work, but good isn't necessarily revolutionary.
That's true.
And revolution is when you are obstructing, subverting, challenging, confronting the systems and institutions of power.
Absolutely.
And you're creating some type of bulwark or some type of wall between their agenda. Like, you got a lot of black folks doing a lot of good things. You got white folks doing some good things. But are all those collection of good things obstructing any of the overall larger agendas of the system?
True. That's a good question. It's not.
Right. And consciousness is very comforting. But a lot of times consciousness becomes a place we escape to. Like, we are like, I'm conscious, so, I feel good. I know things. I understand things. And understanding something doesn't mean you can stop it.
That's true. I said, I came up with this analogy years ago. I rarely use it. But it's like when you go to the dentist, when you got to get a tooth pulled. It's like Novocaine. They give you that Novocaine, and then you going through pain. They just numb you to pull the pain.
Right.
Pull your tooth, and you wake up, you like, what happened? Or like even with the medical field, like when you going for one thing and then you wake up and your foot gone, or your organs are gone. You be like, man, what happened? Well, I feel like I don't feel that well. And you wonder why. You was like, man, I came in here with no support. I didn't know what was going on. I came in for one thing, it was you got another issue, or you need some more meds. Like you were saying, like with your son, they was trying to give him all type of like opioids, and you and your wife was like, hell no, like not happening.
Yeah. And the real tragedy with that was that there were several non-addictive options for pain management, several natural options for pain management, and they never even put those on the table. But yeah, you have to be an advocate for your people in these hospitals. In fact, I might have to have my wife, Dr. Mingo, on the show just to run that down, and how if you do what she did and what I did in terms of having a child within the medical system, because they're very aggressive too. A lot of black folks that are tentative parents, they lose their children through engaging with the medical system.
Wow.
They lose custody of their children. Their children end up in foster care somewhere because the doctor has one treatment plan for their child. And like, a lot of people don't know this, but the hospital, a physician, is one of the few people in this society that can deprive you of your rights without any trial, without any. Yeah, they can basically certify you as unfit. All they got to do is sign a document, and they can have you restrained, they can have you committed, and several things. And people walk into these hospitals not knowing the level of power that has been given to physicians. So if you walk into a hospital, regardless, if any type of medical professional deems you a threat to your child or a threat to yourself, they don't. It's not like if a cop sees that I committed a crime, he has the right to detain and arrest me. But then the case against me, the evidence against me has to be given to a prosecutor, and it goes before a judge. There's a whole system before you go between I look at you and I suspect you've done something wrong versus convicting you of that wrongdoing. And there's a whole process between the crime or the probable cause for detaining you and convicting and incarcerating you. There's a whole process, and in that process you have a lot of opportunities to intervene, to plead your case, to hire a lawyer. Theoretically, we know people go to jail, they ain't done nothing all the time, but theoretically, in the hospital they don't. I could walk in the hospital with my youngest son right now to do just a routine checkup, and a healthcare professional can report, well, we have a father here we feel is a threat to his son. And based on that suspicion alone, they can take my child into custody and take me into custody. Or if I say something erratic, I think there's lead in the water. Oh, well, he has a neurosis. He's having a psychotic breakdown, and he's a threat to himself and his children. They can strap me to a bed, not convict me of a crime, not even charge me with a crime. And when you get, because I have a homeboy who was arrested, and this is years and years ago, more than 20 years ago, and I met him when I was in special ed, and he was arrested for a series of crimes. And his lawyer told him, listen, because you were high and you were on drugs and stuff, I can get you an insanity plea. And I can get you not guilty by reason of insanity. If you're willing to sit down with this professional and have them do a write-up on you. And so he's just like, wow, man, not guilty. That's all he heard, not guilty. Because he was looking at some real time about, he said he was looking at 10 to 15 years.
What?
Because he had definitely done the crimes. He was high, and he was wild and geeking out, and he had done some things he shouldn't have done. And so they were like, I can get you, but he wasn't insane. And so anyway, he was in custody. They had already had him. He wasn't able to make bail. Anyway, he went through with his lawyer's advice and said, listen, not guilty by reason of insanity. So he went to trial, and the doctor said, well, I have these reports written up, and my client is not guilty by reason. We're doing a not guilty by reason of insanity plea. And the judge signed off on it. It's like, okay, fine. So we're going to remand you to the custody of the healthcare system. So even though he was incarcerated, he was in hospitals and institutions. And he said there was no outdate. He said, I was looking at a crime, at maximum I was going to do 10 to 15 years with eligible parole within 5. He did 18 years. And he said there was I was basically given an indeterminate sentence. And I was able to get out of jail when a psychologist signed off on a sheet of paper saying I was psychologically well enough to get out of jail. And the whole time he's locked up, I'm like, he's writing me letters. We talk on the phone from time to time. Very, on the level guy. And he said they were giving him experimental drugs. And so the medical system is as oppressive and more deadly than the prison industrial system.
There's a book.
But we think because they got lab coats instead of badges.
That's the name.
Medical apartheid. There's another book called Acres of Skin. It came out about 15 years before medical apartheid, called Acres of Skin, that talks about medical experimentation on black prisoners. So yeah,
I'm going to check that one out.
Yeah. So but anyway, we are getting from all levels, all angles of this society. We're getting it, and I think that our response is two types of responses: non-existent and inadequate responses. Because I think we do in the conscious community. Now, I'm not as critical as the conscious community because there's no other community I would waste time with. Right. The conscious community, the black conscious community, is the best community amongst all. Give me a better community.
It's true.
Real talk. Because most of the criticisms you level against the conscious community can be leveled against all other black communities.
That's true.
Because you got the black Christian community. We're not robbing the community of literally billions of dollars a year. The black Christian community is. Where you got the black academic community, that or the black conservative, or even black liberals. So yeah, because you can talk about all of the negative aspects of the black community, but nobody ever says, okay, here are the liabilities, but they never talk about the assets. And they never do comparative analysis of all other communities.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, the conscious community has a lot of problems. What are some other communities? I ask other people, besides the conscious community, what other communities are there? And how do they function? They don't even identify any other groups.
Yeah, sure.
So, but anyway, moving on. Let's go back to the book for a second. Why academic auction block? What exactly is the academic auction block?
So the academic auction block, if you go to my Instagram, I posted a clip. It was like a clip from a lecture in Harlem. This is where I first start talking about it. This was 2016. But academic auction block is like an African-centered solution to the school-to-prison pipeline. So the principal is the warden, teachers are the corrections officers, classroom is the cell block, SWAT is off-duty police officers and security forces. Playground is the yard, and cafeteria is the mess hall. And this, I just found this information. Somebody sent it to me, but Airmark is a company that's well known globally that provides food for prisons, food and like uniforms for like for sports teams, for like the NFL, all like schools, colleges, food for colleges, and then they also provide like uniforms for like prisons and schools.
Right.
So they play like a large factor into. So I'll be adding that into the next book. But yeah, the academic auction block is something I came up with based off just my observation working inside of schools and working, being a part of, the system, coming from systematic miseducation and special education myself. So sharing my experiences with just lecturing, and then I even have been doing research and looking at the college campus as a plantation as well.
I remember one time, because I'm kind of the opposite of you. I don't like working with kids. To be honest with you, I don't really think there's an age distinction. I don't really, because I don't think that you can just work with the youth or just work with the elders or just work with the middle ages. I think there has to be a symbiotic,
we need some adult
synergistic relationship between all of these age groups and generations.
Absolutely.
I don't think, I think if every single black person under the age of 25 was revolutionary conscious, it wouldn't be enough. We need elders. We need the middle age. We need everybody. And we need a means of educating and sustaining everybody. I don't think, because you have people like, oh, I just focus on the youth. You have sisters, oh, I just deal with women because black men are screwed up. And then, so it's...
I do adult education as well.
Right. But what you said about, because my time in the schools, I've spent a lot of times in CPS and in school, because my wife is not just a teacher, she's an educational activist. And so we worked within the schools. But I've been in the school, I worked as a substitute teacher for some time.
How was that?
It was horrible. I was actually thinking about becoming a teacher, and my wife was saying, if you're going to become a teacher, you probably can do some subbing and things like that. So I was at CSU taking their master's in teaching program. And I went to sub just to get some time in the classroom. And I did once, I transferred out from the master's in teaching to the master's in history program, because I'm like, I'm not doing this. Number one, the teaching program, I sat in that classrooms with grad students in education. My first time being around grad educational, never messed with education. But my wife had been doing it. She seemed to be so fulfilled and active. And like when they had the previous teachers union strike, I went down to the teachers union protest with her and just, supporting her. But I'm like, yeah, I could do this. And I sat in the classroom with these teachers, and they, number one, Most people with education degree freaking hate children. They have the worst opinion in children. In fact, my aunt, who was an educator as well, said that bad people go into three careers. They go to work with animals, elderly, or children. Like that's one of the types of jobs that attract the most psychopaths and sociopaths. Because they like to target vulnerable populations. So people work with animals that don't have a voice, children don't have a voice, and the elderly don't have a voice.
That's why they don't want me inside.
And I just thought she would, I thought she was gripping. I thought she was just complaining because she had worked her all the way up to become a provost and vice president of academic affair at a major educational institution. And she come on, all these people, the dean got me messed up, the student union's tripping. So she was an administrator. So when she would say that, I just thought she was tripping. But when I sat in that classroom, and I know I'm going to get in trouble because I know a lot of good teachers. I know a lot of dedicated educators. But what you'll find is whenever you find the dedicated educators, they are outsiders. They're good teachers in spite of the system, not because of the system. It's just like the good banker that wants to help people rise up financially. The system is corrupt, But anyway, I worked it, and I taught chess, and I was a chess tutor. And we were using chess as a means to introduce the children to critical thinking and mathematics. Right. I also did the Green Teens program for a few years, teaching urban agriculture and basically that was a full-on botany and science program. Right. So I was in the schools. Like one day I showed up at DuSable Academy. We had set up an organic garden there, and we were doing basically a botany course with me and King Diallo. Okay. And one day we show up, and there are cops completely surrounded the schools with automatic AR-15 automatic weapons in full tactical gear, have completely surrounded and set up a military perimeter around the school. And me, I have the students that I work with, and I park and I try to get into school like I got children in that school. I'm not even a parent. They got the parents out there all lined up, and the parents are just standing there. I'm basically a supplemental education teacher, and the parents are very passive. And I'm like, your children are literally surrounded by armed goons with military-grade weapons. So I go to one of the guys in the flak vest and the AR-15 and those special tactical glasses. And I'm like, what's going on? And apparently there was someone had reported to one of the teachers that one of the students had a gun. No one had seen the gun. Nobody in a position of authority had seen the gun brandished. There was just a rumor that there was a gun, a handgun within the school. And as the rumor of a handgun brought a full SWAT team, Special Weapons and Tactics brought a full SWAT team, full shutdown. No children were allowed to enter or leave the facility, and they were completely surrounded. And even the community, they had a defensive perimeter set up around the school with these guys armed, and they were facing out. Now the threat was in the school, but these policemen were facing out towards the community and had their weapons trained on us who were outside the building. So they have it's a siege mentality.
I was telling somebody I used to work for a program. I'm not gonna name the program. Mike. I used to work for a program in the high school. We would do workshops for the students. So one day we took certain students, freshmen, on a field trip. So it was something that happened outside of school. It was a fight that broke. Some guys tried to jump on another guy outside of school. It was like two on 10. So the two guys beat up all 10 dudes. So this trickles back inside the school. So a teacher ended up getting hit with like a book or something. And then they shut the whole school down because they had been fighting all day. But they shut it down. It wasn't like police but they set up like a perimeter where it's at Morgan Park High School is the high school. But the police station's right up the street from Morgan Park High School. Off 100, it's like 111th and I can't remember. It's right not too far from Gwendolyn Brooks. But they set up like a perimeter. Like we had to wait for them to give us the okay for us to go inside just to get our belongings.
Yeah. So yeah, they definitely treat our students and like prisoners and run our schools like prisons. I mean, that's not, and I think a lot of times with terms like school to prison pipeline, it starts to just roll off people's tongue. We got to stop polluting, and it just becomes a term that floats around out there. Even white folks start saying
some people think
and when white folks start saying it, you know it's lost its bite.
And a lot of people think charters are better, or what the idea of having like school choice.
Yeah. Well, Bernie's gonna do away with charter schools. Vote Bernie. Because I've worked in public schools. Well, I was a student. I went to public school all the way to, I was actually expelled from public school. They wanted to put me in the alternative school system. So from preschool to 8th grade, I was in public school. Mm-hmm. And then from 9th grade to graduation, I was in private school. Mm. And then I've worked in charter schools and public schools and private schools.
What's the difference like attending? Because I never attended private school. What's the difference between like public and private?
Well, in my era, we weren't policed. Mm. They actually treated us like adults. They didn't. I know from going. I went to several grade schools. I mean, a whole lot of grade schools. I can't even name. But my main schools were Knott's Elementary. And many of the schools I went to were like fed by housing projects. They kind of set the city up so that the kids that live in the various housing projects would all go to the same school. Mm-hmm. And then the kids that lived in the communities and homes, they would be kind of shunted towards other schools. But the main difference was there was very little policing. Mm-hmm. And the private school kids did all the same things that the public school kids did. Getting high from sex, drugs, and rock and roll, vandalism, theft, petty theft, all the same things I saw in public school with the poor kids. And I was going to school with children of lawyers and physicians, mayors and city council members. These are the people who went to my school, young people who went to my school, where the cars in the student parking lot were nicer than the cars in the teacher's parking lot. Wow. And but I was on the bus the whole time. You know, I think my sister and I were the only two people that went to that school that lived in a public housing project. Oh, wow. And so we catch the bus from the project. So, but anyway, they didn't police the students. They kind of, it was really like they let you come and go from the campus. They didn't have strict. The academics were a lot more intense. But it was more like they expected the people of the elites, they were training them to be who they were, to fulfill their role in society. Mm-hmm. So they were teaching, in the public school, they were teaching us to be the poor, the wretched of the earth. In the middle school, they were teaching and educating the middle class people. Mm-hmm. And even though I'd see, so basically it wasn't policing, and they treated you how they wanted you to be. It was like John B. Watson. They were cultivating you to fulfill your niche in the society. And when I was going to that school, it was a Catholic school, and they would give us a Catholic education. But I go to the parties for Bishop Hogan, but I also go to parties for my neighborhood school, Southeast, and I hang out with the cats that went to Southeast. All of my best friends went to Southeast that didn't drop out of school, all went to Southeast and graduated from Southeast or Southwest High School, the neighborhood black schools. And I'd see all the same behaviors, but this is what really blew my mind. I would go to, and they make us go to confessionals, and we had to go confess our sins to the priests and the archdiocese, and you had to take 4 years of theology, and they were really pounded, and you walk in, and it'd be all this Christian iconography. Like you walk in the stool, and there'd be like this 8-foot porcelain statue of white Jesus and cherubims, and it was Catholic iconography everywhere. There was constant bombardment of Catholic and religious indoctrination, but it seemed not to touch the students. Like the students we curse, they listen to Ice Cube and NWA and Bust Down and Spice One, and they'd go, and I go to the parties of Hogan, and they're drinking, smoking weed, and fornicating. So I'm like, these Catholics, and our teachers were nuns and priests and people from within the church. Like literally, nuns in their habits would be teaching our classes. So I'm like, man, these Catholic people are really stupid. They get teaching us all this pious religious education, but the students, we sinning, we wilding out. We ain't going for it. But now, in my 40s, and I kept up with a lot of those people, they planted those seeds and they have bloomed. Like a lot of people I went to school with that drank 40 ounces and smoked blunts and was screwing out girls and kicking it and running the streets, they are all religious now. So the Catholics didn't even care. They'd sit in class. Sister Mary Pat would get in front of class and teach her class, and people be snickering and clowning in class. But she knew, because she'd been there for generations. She knew the seeds that they were planting. The seeds that they were planting in the students were going to fester. I wouldn't say cultivate. They would fester. And I have so many of the wildest cats from my high school, so many of the worldliest, wildliest cats. You would swear they act and behave just like our instructors at the Catholic school. I mean, I talked to one dude and he was online, yeah, Jesus this. And I'm like, yo, really? Are you serious? Oh, I don't argue about my God. I'm not going to debate you. And then he eventually blocked me. Me and this dude went to high school. They used to call us brothers because we both had the high top fade, both tall, skinny cats.
Right.
We used to play ball together. He used to cut my hair. And this dude was one of the wildest cats. He was the one that would pull up at the party or pull up at the club, pop his trunk, just drinks, weed, bags of weed. He was the wildest, livest cat in high school. Right? Mm-hmm. And we went from freshman year to senior year knowing each other, playing ball together, kicking it. Mm-hmm. But whatever they was putting in and those seeds they were dropping, by the time he was 35 years old, this dude was the most pacified Negro, one from the wildest cats. And I'm like, wow, that really taught me a lot about indoctrination and why why white people are very serious. They want their symbology everywhere. Their little flags, their little Greco-Roman iconography on your dollar bill, on a cereal bowl. Those subtle messages and that constant full spectrum dominance, they call it. Full spectrum. Like a spectrum is what you can see. Spec means to spectate, to see, spectacles. Full spectrum dominance. It's not just everything you see, they have to have a level of control and influence.
Right.
So that's the thing that really blew my mind, going to an elite school. Now they don't waste their time with like the poor blacks. This is something we don't understand. We always think that poor people are indoctrinated and brainwashed. The people who are most indoctrinated are the elites and the middle class. It ain't the poor blacks who are heavily indoctrinated. They don't care about our indoctrination because they control us through depriving us of resources and direct force. They don't care. So I thought that my brainwashing was happening in my public school. They didn't care to brainwash some black kid from the projects. My father was in the penitentiary. My mother was addicted to crack. I'm no threat. I don't have the resources to be a threat. No matter how angry I get, if I want to lash out, the best I can do is lash out at my neighbor who's just as poor and black as me. But I don't have any position to do institutional damage. Whereas you get a Negro that you're going to let go to your law schools. You got a Negro that's planning on going to your medical school. You got a Negro that plan on enlisting in the military and getting the rank of lieutenant, captain, general. Those are the blacks. So the upper class and elite blacks who had the quote-unquote best education, quote-unquote had the best opportunity, that had been to France and been to Italy and traveled the world, those Negroes had the most intensive, thorough indoctrination. And even when they go Afrocentric, or even when they go militant, or even when they go wild nigga, gangbanger street, that indoctrination is so well ingrained that they know that there are certain triggers, certain things that happen in their life that's going to turn. And I saw dozens of people that I went to school with that were either black conscious or street hood cats or just worldly cats. And that Catholic indoctrination, and they might be Baptist, or they might be secular, but they act just like they are pious, non-questioning, non-threatening, non-rebelling dudes. And it blows my mind to be able to see people from like 1989, 90, 91, 92, all the way up to 2019. I've been in contact with some of these guys, and I saw that indoctrination come into full fruition. It blows my mind every time.
Ryan, your story remind me of like when I first started in academia before I was railroaded. I have a bachelor's in African American Studies from West Illinois University. So later on, I found out, I didn't understand at the time, but I didn't know what the boule was until I got to undergrad. So I was programmed to be like, all right, I was programmed, they was training me to be an alpha. Then one of my professors, not gonna name his name, he's well known amongst like intellectual circles. He's a black Christian and a black conservative, and he gave me all the information for like Alpha. They was like, we gonna make you the ace. You gonna be the ace on your line. We grooming you to be the next W.E.B. Du Bois. That they was bringing me into the cuffs, and then when I discovered it, I started asking questions. It was like, no way you tell me you don't ask questions you want to know the answers to. When I'm gonna ask about the boule. So I just go and start digging. And then I find Steve Coakley. I'm like, whoa. I can see why they didn't want me to know who he is. So they was like, all right, we ain't get him now. When I get to grad school, I go to the Jacob H. Carruthers Center at Northeastern Illinois University to get my master's. This is 2017. They're
Conrad.
Yeah, they're trying to re-groom me to.
At the Carruthers Center?
Yeah, it's sad. It's
Dr. Warwell?
No, not him, but some of the other professors. But it's sad and disheartening to know that when I was doing lectures, I did a lecture called, and I was using like a lot of information it was teaching me like in my lectures. But me being who I am, my influence is Coakley. Like I'm naming names.
Right.
At this time, and then they was like, "Yo, if you do this, it was intellectual game banging, the fraternal order, Afrocentricity, and charter school movement." So I'm naming Molefe K. Asante. I'm naming Milana Karanga. I'm naming like all the names like the heavyweight people that's like in academia. And they was like, man, if you do this is what I was told directly from somebody. I'm not gonna name his name, like, but he was like, if you do this lecture, like your academic career is gonna be over.
Yeah.
It's over. It was like, if you do this lecture, just know you will never get into any PhD program. It don't matter which one you apply to, you will never get in. And then I was like, man, I knew about like, heard about it.
How things work.
And then I was like, wow, they really put the clamps on me. They was like, man, they basically trying to tell me, shut up. You shouldn't be sharing this information. And I was like, oh, okay.
So is that how things played out?
Yeah. I applied for many PhD programs, never been able to get in. And that's fine.
Well, it just
don't bother.
Is it in that in your field of expertise though? Because they like run history and black studies and.
It mainly black studies, but like even in education. I'm having issues with even finding jobs, even finding like full-time jobs.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to work for somebody else. But if the opportunity presented itself where I could get in within it and be on play the spook that set by the door and like give children and youth like tools to be, to just for basic like survival.
Do you still subscribe to the idea that you can change an institution from within?
No.
Yeah. Because I mean,
that's why I built my own. Like, it's a lot of so-called people like I was like, in order when you tearing down the system, you have to build other entities to replace those institutions that you're tearing down.
Right.
So I tell somebody you can't bag or go in on youth if you have nothing to offer them. You can't tell a young man, oh, stop selling drugs and put the gun down if you don't have like opportunity.
I disagree with that though.
No,
I think you can tell us, put the gun down, and stop selling drugs, and not have anything beyond that to say, hey, you shouldn't be shooting other black people and you shouldn't be selling drugs to black people.
What I'm saying is you can't tear them down and don't give them a solution.
How's that tearing them down though? Because in me.
Okay.
If somebody's raping a woman, you can't tell somebody not to rape a woman if they ain't got nobody to have sex with.
That's true.
Yeah, you cannot rape and not look.
Of course.
I had no options. I was homeless, poor, hungry, and I didn't sell drugs. I absolutely refused to sell drugs.
Yeah, me too.
Absolutely, I'm not selling drugs. And I had friends that sold drugs. And I said to them, you're doing to somebody else's mama what somebody did to your mother. Mm-hmm. I hated drugs and I hated drug dealing and I wouldn't do it. But, I would do other things. I ain't said I would steal. but I wouldn't break into people's houses or break into people's cars.
Right.
I would go to 7-Eleven or Quick Trip or Thrifty Mart, and I'd steal from the corporations. You know, I'd steal from, steal food and things from businesses. You know, but I wouldn't rob. I would never put a gun in somebody's face like that. But I ain't saying you got to be lawful. I ain't saying you got to be an angel. But there are certain crimes and certain behaviors that are directly feed the interest of our oppressors.
I agree.
So I understand that making alternatives, but I think that you can't just go to somebody and say, stop doing this subversive thing. Stop doing this behavior that's killing our people on behalf of somebody else. Like Rick Ross. I don't understand why Rick Ross is a hero amongst black folks. You know, I had somebody call me like, yeah, we bringing Rick Ross to Kansas City. You want to come down? And we're having this whole thing. But I'm like, Rick Ross, the CIA agent? Like, no. I'm not, what, I'm going to come all the way down to Kansas City to sit across from Rick Ross? Hell no.
Right.
Like, why? So, I think that that's something. I agree that you should be building towards someone else, but I don't think you have to build to or have your own institution to be able to say, hey, stop selling drugs. You can just say that and be like, what you got? Nothing. I'm telling you, stop selling the damn drugs, and I ain't got nothing for your ass. Stop selling drugs. And I hate it because I agree with Irritated Genie on that. He said that too. I understand when you work with youth and you understand, like, you get in really embedded in their lives and you want, but I think that there's just certain things that aren't options that shouldn't be options for our people. But again,
I agree. Yeah. I agree wholeheartedly.
So we only got time. It's 8:39. This is Q4 Radio, AM 1680. TuneIn app, iTunes Radio. But I get in trouble with people because they do think that, I attack because especially in Chicago, there's just a lot of rhetoric about street organizations or street tribes, and everybody from Fred Hampton Jr. to Farrakhan talk a lot about the potential of the gangs and the gangbangers and the street youth, the people in the street being a potential revolutionary force. And I don't see contemporarily or historically where that has the potential for happening. And when people were promoting that stop snitching and all of that, and they were talking about the gang truce, and because I wasn't supporting the stop snitching and the gang truce and all that, people started calling me a fed, calling me a cop. A lot of prominent black, because now you have this revolutionary but gangsters. You have this gangster aesthetic that has penetrated a lot of parts because of the guns. A lot of guys, the guns, the strength, the power that comes, the superficial representation of strength and power that comes from the street element and street culture. And there are black men within the conscious movement that want to represent that strength and power. So I've even had people like, oh, you a cop. Like, what makes me a cop? Oh, you sitting here telling people to snitch. And I'm like, I didn't tell people to snitch. I'm trying to understand. Just you get in trouble for asking questions. Certain things you can't even question.
Yeah, people get upset.
Yeah, so especially working with young people, because I said stop snitching in the black community came as a means to feed resistance. Like you don't tell when Harriet come through. You don't tell on Harriet. You don't tell on somebody stealing from the plantation. You don't tell when we trying to plot a revolt. You don't tell the massa.
Right.
And we went from don't tell on revolutionaries to don't tell on rapists, drug dealers, and murderers.
I know, they gotta go.
Of our own people.
They gotta go.
But that's the thing now. That's the thing. Everybody was, even conscious revolutionary people are pushing that. So, but that's a whole nother thing, man. But I never claimed to be street.
Yeah, they love, a lot of these, the new age, I call them same way, I call them reactionary black gangsters. The RBGs, they love.
That's really good.
They love like the celebrity, like they call. A lot of them be like, the thing I don't get, like, I get it. You want to keep your clout up on social media, But like this thing, I followed it to what Tekashi 69. I was like, why you mad when it's a lot of snitches on the street? So you know it's a snitch directly in your community.
But what are you snitching on? Like what are the snitches snitching on? Is there some plot to overthrow?
Yeah.
You know, or to subdue?
No, I was telling somebody that you knew what it was when you start rocking with Tekashi. So what do you expect from that person? Like, there's certain people I know like that in the organizing community that I know directly to stay away from them.
Yeah.
Because they working with the police.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. I'm looking at it from that perspective.
Right.
You knew Tekashi.
But okay, Tekashi, what did he do the wrong thing when he started cooperating with the police?
No, he did what most people.
I didn't ask if he did what most. I asked, was it right or wrong?
Well, they set themselves
for
up
you,
for
for
that.
what you think.
For what I believe, and they set themselves up for that.
Was he right or wrong though?
Well, from my perspective, like
what type of because Tekashi 69, what will be the ultimate fallout from that? Now, from what I know about the case, he was telling on people who were engaged in robbery,
of course,
murder, drug trafficking.
Get him out of there.
Drug trafficking. It's not official, but so I won't say it. Robbery, extortion, murder, drug trafficking. Those are the major charges that Tekashi was snitching on people engaged in those activities. Now, why were they engaged in those activities?
That's true.
Was it to fund a revolutionary movement?
No.
Was it to educate black youth? No. Was it to obstruct or impede the police repression of black communities?
No.
Because I don't understand why so many black people, even conscious black people, are outraged at Tekashi 69.
I'm not even upset about it. I was like,
you know, I'm not saying you, but I'm saying good. You in the community.
I was like, good.
Everybody all over social media, everybody's like, oh, Tekashi's a snitch, stop snitching. Everybody from the street level cats to Snoop Dogg, and I'm surprised Obama didn't come out and diss Tekashi. It's gonna happen. You know, and the same cats that were fans of this. To me, I think we should have been condemning Tekashi number one when he's all over the media talking about nigga this, nigga that.
Exactly.
When he's talking about literally when he was convicted of raping a child. Like at the time when we should have been condemning him, everybody was celebrating him. And then when he became a snitch and tried, to me, him snitching is him making amends for his misdeeds. But maybe, and I try to ask people, like, can you explain that to me while you're outraged that, oh, he's cooperating with the feds. I'm like, name one progressive, revolutionary, or just righteous thing that Tekashi 69 is disrupting by snitching.
True.
And I'm like, we need to have a new thing because, like I said, what I see, having grown up in a community that was controlled by gangs, that was saturated with drugs, and was constantly harassed and harangued by police. I didn't see in any way how the gangs were an asset to the community. They were a liability and a threat, and the gangs made the black community more vulnerable to police repression, not less. And I'm like, so can you reconcile this and help me to understand this?
It's a lot of them working with them too.
Yeah, and I had people.
It's set up. I mean, it's the gangs and street organizations are government entities.
Thank you.
Anyway.
Yes, all gangs are. Gangs. Whenever the CIA wants to go into a country and destabilize a country, the first people they reach out are the organized crime elements. That's the first thing. After World War II. There was a very strong positive attitude towards the communists all over Europe. In Italy, because the communists in Europe were the first people to fight against the Nazis and the fascists. And so after World War II was won, people who knew the real history knew that the communists defeated the Nazis, not the capitalists, not the Americans. And so the CIA said, if we don't take action, Italy's going to be communist, Spain's going to be communist. France has the potential to be communist. So whenever they would send CIA agents out, they teach it. If you read John Perkins or the guy, there's another guy. I mean, he came out decades before John Perkins. He's passed on now. But the first thing they trained you to do, like if you were a CIA agent, is tell you, we're going to send you to Zimbabwe or we're going to send you to Compton. The first thing you do is reach out to the organized crime elements in any community, because they're the people, because the gangsters have the identical value system as the capitalists. So if you want to go overthrow, what did they do when they went into Honduras and wanted to destabilize Honduras? They started working with the cartels to overthrow the socialist government. Same thing they do in Venezuela. Same thing they just did in Bolivia. So the more powerful and more widespread gangs are in a black community, the more vulnerable a community is to infiltration and disruption from the outside, not less. And you got people as prominent as Farrakhan talking about, yeah, he once said the kids who sag their pants are the most revolutionary generation, because sagging your pants is evidence that you are willing to rebel against the system. Just pandering to the street elements, you know, and it's not an accident that the CIA and the record industry work together to make sure that if we're going to have a hip-hop industry, it's going to be gangster.
Yeah, they don't talk about how guns are placed in the community, the freight trains.
Oh, yeah.
I remember when I was in high school.
Even now, that was just a couple of years ago. I'm sorry, but yeah.
Yeah, my freshman year of high school, one of my good brothers, we still good friends to this day. He's like, you gonna make it quick, $1,000, $2,000? I was like, I'm not interested, but I'm open to hear. All you gotta do is hit these freights with me and get these weapons.
Yeah.
He was like, all we gotta do is just drop them off at a certain point, like in an alley somewhere.
Right.
And then I'm 14, like 13, 14 at the time, so it's not hitting me. And then as I'm getting older, and I just start seeing certain things, I was like, man.
That's every hood. In my same hood, you didn't have access to nutritious food. You didn't have access to updated textbooks. When I was in the grade school, I had textbooks from the 60s and 70s. We don't have access to nutritious food. We don't have access to updated textbooks. The only thing we have of high quality in the black community is sneakers and weapons. The only thing of the building materials in our homes were toxic. I knew people in the projects had mushrooms growing up out of fungus, growing up out of the carpets. I'm not lying. In their houses, they had to pick mushrooms off the carpet in their homes. Whoa. They didn't even use quality building materials. And the same kids that got textbooks from the 50s and 60s, the same kid that's eating processed government cheese, low quality food, the same kid that can't read or write, got a 357 with an infrared scope. Chrome, pearl handle, hollow point bullets. Like, where did this arsenal of quality weapons come to the black community?
When I was in D.C., I was passing through the projects. I ended up walked one of my students home because he lived in Berry Farms, the same housing complex Kevin Durant is from.
Right.
And then I got to know people because I lived in D.C. for 2 years. So I know some of the youth.
Chocolate City.
So I'm walking past one of the youth. He's like, "Oh, you good, big bro?" He's like, "You look at my new toy." He had a Tech 9, and then the other one had the other young man. They was like 13, 14. The other one had the Tommy gun. And then as soon as I left, all you just hear is them shooting.
I can't say no names, but it was Swope Park in Kansas City. Swope Park. We used to go to this place, the Tunnel, and we would set up bottles. We'd be out there shooting off some of the highest quality weapons, you know. But it is without the organized crime elements in our community, the CIA. If there are no gangs in a neighborhood or in a nation they want to overthrow, the CIA has to start the gangs. That's how they infiltrate. That's how they infiltrate. Patrice Lumumba was overthrown by gangsters. Kwame Nkrumah was unseated by gangsters. South Africa That the number one when Winnie Mandela was trying to rise up, she would have these soccer cups. It was the gangsters and the hoods that were fighting against the other blacks that wanted to go at the throat of the white South African apartheid government. And I get in trouble because I'm just going off the history. And if you can give me some counter evidence, I would love nothing better than for these gangsters in the community, because Chicago is a gang city. I've never seen gang saturation anywhere like Chicago.
Politicians.
I remember in New York, it wasn't even Bloods and Crips in Chicago. So I'm like, if you can give me evidence or demonstrate to me how the gangs are a potential revolutionary or freedom fighting force, then I'll be RBG too. But you got a lot of people, because there's a lot of money over there. Yeah. There's a lot of money. I mean, and a lot of, these gangsters come and they generate money, and the hip hop, pseudo gangsters and hip hop. But gangsterism is anathema to revolution. It just is. And people call me a fed and call me out my name when I'm just going off the record. Show me a time when organized, and they don't, and they're like, well, they protect the community, because they talk about the Slaussons and people that love to go over this history, how the black gangs in California formed to defend the community. And I say, yeah, can't argue that. But at the same time, Compton, California, which used to be 90% black, is now 70% Hispanics. And when the Hispanics came and ran out the blacks, the gangs were the first people to run. The gangs abandoned the community. They didn't fight for the community.
Absolutely.
They ran out of the community and left everybody else when the bangers came. And they've been in that community for 30 years, preying on black people and intimidating black people. And soon as some opposition came, some sustained opposition, the gangs dropped their weapons and ran away. And they want to fight me for just saying the facts. And they flipped Compton. So even we got evidence of communities, black communities that have gang presence, coming under siege from people outside our communities, and there was no evidence that the black gangs took up arms and switched from preying on our community to defending our community. There's no evidence that has happened. Now I know, and everybody like to talk about Malcolm X and how he converted from a gangster to a freedom fighter. But how many other people were incarcerated right alongside Malcolm X? For every Malcolm X, every brother that went in a pimp, and came out of Malcolm X, there were 1,000 brothers that went in a pimp and came out a more efficient, better pimp, a better trained pimp.
Yeah.
So the standard is you go to prison and you become more of a predator, not less. Yeah. So but we like fantasy more than reality. And I'm like, well, you can only get to an ideal situation if you deal with the harsh, unpleasant reality. So what do you want from me? You know what I'm saying? So I'll be that guy that and I got people right here on the south side of Chicago, organizers that have a lot of rhetoric about the gangs and the streets, and I'm like, if that's your arena, fine. If that's your area of operation, I ain't taking it away from you, but we gotta stop selling these lies to our people.
That's true.
We just got. And I remember back in '92 when the speech was like, brothers with the AKs and the 9Ms need to learn how to correctly shoot them, say those guns for a revolution. And there was a lot of efforts going back to the 60s, trying to get street elements, even trying to get pimps, because if you read the book, The Spook Was Set by the Door, it was the black prostitutes that he used, because the white military men, the white CIA agents, would come to D.C. and get black prostitutes. So he started training the prostitutes on how to do surveillance and how to do, collect intelligence. And so the men would come, smoke, get high, and lay with the the white men in the CIA would be with the prostitutes, and the prostitutes would get information from them. And so that's a fantasy. That's not how it happened. I would love if that was the case, but that ain't how it has ever gone down. We ain't managed to pull that off yet. So we ain't pretending like it's gonna happen if it ain't never happened.
That's true.
But anyway, let's give some close out. People how to contact you, how to secure the book again, because we're coming up on the hour to where we have to wrap up the show.
The book, Blood on the Academic Auction Block.
And say right into the mic, because I want to
Blood on the Academic Auction Block. You can find it on Google. Just type the name in. You can find me on Instagram at Brandon Lamar Scates, SCATES, Writes. And then YouTube, Brandon Lamar Scates, Gmail, BrandonLamarScates@gmail.com.
And say across social media. Will you be doing any public presentations or any
I'm working on getting back to doing that.
Cause you were pretty prolific.
Yeah, I'm coming back. It's been 2020. This will be a 3-year hiatus. So I'm gonna do a book signing. If you want to book me for your city, just send me an email or DM me, and we could talk. And I do educational consulting as well.
Okay.
So if you
plug your
if you want me to come in and do some tutoring or teach you how to do homeschooling, please feel free to reach out to me, and we could collaborate.
Master.
Yeah, Marcus Klein taught me like how to build institutions.
Right,
so me personally, eventually, when I do have children, I plan on starting my own school.
When you do, you got a girl?
Have somebody.
No, man, yeah, I saw your phone. That girl. Who's that girl you cheek to cheek? Cute sister.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So ladies, fall back. You
got somebody. I got somebody.
It's a nice looking young lady.
Thank you.
Young black
she'll
couple.
Be starting law school.
It's in law school. Oh, yeah, okay. So y'all strivers.
Yeah.
Don't worry. So get him now, y'all, because any minute now,
you're
gonna be upper middle class.
Nah.
You're gonna be out there. Get access now. Get it while it's high. Get in on the ground floor, because law school, grad school, y'all making it. Y'all gonna be all right. It's just the rest of us we gotta work on. Okay. So anyway, I'm glad to have you on.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me, man. This is the second time.
Yeah. And I look forward to checking out the book.
Yeah,
I really do.
Man.
So I got the link on Lulu. I just ain't moved forward because like I said, yesterday was my wife's birthday.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we it was all her day. So I didn't really get a chance to order the book or anything. But
absolutely.
I appreciate and I was up late all night.
I appreciate you.
Just reading and praying.
Yeah, it is. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come on here.
Anytime, man. Anytime.
Give me the opportunity to come on here.
Anytime, man. Anytime. It's good to see young brothers out here doing the work that you do, And I think that you could be, you're a really good role model for your peers and everything. Because like I said, I don't talk to young people. I can't stand young people. I hate their music. I hate how they dress. I hate that smelly food they eat. Keep them kids off my lawn. Get off my lawn. That's where I am. That's the age I'm at. You ain't got no gray in your beard. That's where I am. Get off my lawn. So I need brothers like you to come up.
Stanley for Friday?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's where I am. So I need young cats to come up in the struggle that can talk to young people and stand to be around them in their music. Come talk to my son too, because I can't even talk to him.
Yeah.
I'm like, what you doing in the refrigerator? That's all I say to young people. Get out my refrigerator. Get off my lawn. Turn that down, boy. So I'm old. I'm done. Ain't no kids listening to me. So I'm very happy we got young Pan-Africanists coming up.
Yes,
and so anytime, bro, you got something going on or a project, you can come through. And Q4 Radio, AM68, Bro Diallo Show. We see y'all Friday morning. Peace. I'm very happy. That's the delay.